As far as markets are concerned, flat with a positive bias, so 20 points higher for the Nifty, 8,718. Not much to read into the market since opening. Even the broader markets, they started well, but now you can see that it's a choppy sort of a session, or the interest seems to be very low. So mid cap index was up 0.6, but it's now up about 0.4. Small cap, however, continues to gain. One sector that has been doing well is the housing finance company, and constantly quarter after quarter they have been delivering earnings. Let's talk about that sector. We have a guest from India Ratings. They have written about LAP. LAP is Loan Against Property. Prakash Agarwal, Director and Co-Head Financial Institution at India Ratings and Research. Prakash, if you could just tell us about the LAP findings. Is it getting very, very competitive, which means spreads for these companies would come down?
Yeah, hi. So what we're saying is that already because at least in the urban markets, banks have become very active in this segment. So that has brought down the spreads in this segment. The spreads, which were almost like 500 basis points above SBI base rate, has shrunk to almost 300 basis points. So what it means is that if you take out the OPEX cost and all, very little spreads are left for the lenders to absorb the credit cost and make returns on equity.
Right. What do you do with terms of demand? Now, always it's said that, demand is very high. Is majority of it coming in from refinancing gains, which may not be the case now?
Well, not majority, but yeah, a sizable part of growth in terms of at least the urban LAP has been because of the portfolio churning which has been happening from one NBFC to others. So what it results is that, because the property prices at least till some time back were seeing some rise in prices. That resulted in the borrower actually getting it refinanced and topping up the loans. That also kind of suppressed the stress in the segment because as the interest could be served, at least a part of the interest could be served through the top-up refinancing. However, as we see that this outlook on property prices is subdued, the refinancing is becoming increasingly tougher, and that is kind of bringing up the stress on the for the segment.
Right, and as of now, most of these balance sheets are very strong. Of course, it's absolutely clean, so there is no problem. But only in hindsight, you would come to know that what are the problems?
I don't think the balance sheets are, it also depends, we would see very few NBFCs or a few HFCs which are pure LAP. Most of those NBFCs or HFCs would be doing a part of the LAP. Of course, the NBFCs or HFCs which are more urban focused started this segment to, when the core segments was kind of slowing down, to step in this segment because yields were pretty high and that was supporting the profitability. The stress have just started building up, and we have never seen that stress on the balance sheet because that was kind of hidden under the top, under the, in terms of, because this was getting refinanced. But now the initial stress has started building up, and next 2 to 4 quarters we could see at least on a static basis the NPLs jumping to 5%. The other piece, what we are seeing is that the delinquency, what we are seeing in the segment across the year of origination, the delinquency is highest in FY16. So we could see some pressure on profitability, and if the delinquencies and the loss given default is higher than expected, it could even impact on the balance sheet of some of the lenders.
Right, and what are the sort of trends that you would wait for?
So we already started seeing the pressure, at least the NBFCs which have been late entrant, and we have been more focused, or which have a large portfolio of non-housing, non-residential housing portfolio and more of an industrial portfolio as mortgages. I guess those portfolio would see higher delinquency and even higher losses among the NBFCs. So I think going forward, key monitorable will be in terms of how the NBFCs tighten their lending practices. What are the new avenues, the growth we are seeing? Because if you take out the urban markets, the growth in rural markets is still is pretty good, coming more from volume rather than value. Moreover, given the limited competition in those segments, the pricing is pretty good in those segments. So incrementally, my sense is we'll see more and more NBFCs moving towards the tier 2 and tier 3 cities to expand, where both the volume growth as well as the profitability is good. However, for NBFCs which are focused in the urban segment, the cost of fund becomes very important, because that's where they can compete with banks and some of the stronger NBFCs in that segment.
As far as the new entrants are concerned, they would get more aggressive because their current pricing would not be sufficient for cost of capital in a while?
I think they're already aggressive. They're facing the heat. So what we saw that the late entrant, which didn't even have the cost advantage, we're getting into trying to get into a slightly weaker customer segment or the vehicle collaterals. They could be also playing on in terms of loan to value ratio as well. You also need to understand that the valuation is pretty unstandardized in the segment. So there could be a lot of subjectivity involved between the valuation. So in that case, we hope some more sanity and stronger credit checks building in the system, which could the stress which going forward, the stress could be more contained than what we are seeing right now.
Right. You mentioned about the urban, the growth in the rural market. Can you just tell us about the extent of slowdown in the urban market?
So what we're seeing that incrementally more and more growth which is coming from the value growth, from the value growth and not the volume growth. What it means is that while the number of customers may not be increasing, a large part of growth is coming from higher ticket size, and that was also has been suggested as if since the property prices are going up, that is supporting the borrower to take higher loan. So that's what I was suggesting when I said volume growth. However, if you go to non-urban segments, tier 2 and all, you see incrementally the growth is coming from taking on more customers on board. What it means is that reach is going more, and it may not be playing on terms of more on loan to value ratio or in terms of price competitiveness or competition. So that was my point when I suggested that incrementally volume growth could be expected more from non-urban, non-metro cities.
Right. Sir, thank you so much for taking out time for us.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure talking to you. That was a view coming in on the NBFC space, and within that, what's happening with the housing finance and their LAP portfolio. Risks are rising, but it's not a concern as of now. So wait and watch for more ratios and what's the trend in terms of earnings. Taking a break, coming back in 2 minutes. On the other side,